Hey there, my name is Megan and I am no longer pregnant. I had my baby 2 weeks ago. I had a successful VBAC and that is exactly what this video is going to be all about. I'm going to start off by doing a little third trimester update, share with you the details of my third trimester, the days leading up to when I gave birth, my VBAC story, my birth story, all of the details that go into that and how I was able to achieve a VBAC. And then I also want to share some postpartum details with you guys, what the last 2 weeks have been like, answer some questions that you guys have sent me over on Instagram. If you don't already follow me on Instagram, my name is @MeganBellMade. I update my stories pretty much daily, sharing with you what I'm doing in real life, what I'm doing with my kids, any sort of projects or organization I'm doing in my home, stuff like that. I'm listening because Miles is napping. Well, he's napping. He's having quiet time in his room. And then Isla, the baby, is in her snoo. And she's probably going to wake up pretty soon because she's been in there for a while. And I don't know if Miles will actually nap, but hopefully I can get through this video. The last 2 weeks have been a little overwhelming, but I'm going to rewind. I'm going to talk about my third trimester. The last time I uploaded a pregnancy update video, I think I even said that I wasn't even sleeping with a pregnancy pillow yet. I did end up breaking out my pregnancy pillow. I definitely needed it during that third trimester. I was actually very comfortable physically during my third trimester, very much unlike my first pregnancy with Miles. I felt really good up until the day I gave birth. I felt like I could get around very easily. We live on the second floor of a building and I was able to get up the stairs pretty much, I carried groceries in. I had no issues. However, I started having some gallbladder attacks. So during my third trimester, I had 3 gallbladder attacks and let me tell you, they are the most debilitating and painful thing I've ever experienced. Worse than childbirth because you don't get any breaks with a gallbladder attack. With childbirth, you get breaks between contractions. You don't get that with a gallbladder attack. I'm not really quite sure why I've only had gallbladder attacks during pregnancy. Because I'm pretty sure that during my pregnancy with Miles, I was having some symptoms of a gallbladder attack, not a full-on attack, because I was having the same discomfort in my right rib that I've been having when I have my gallbladder attacks, just not as intensely. So I don't know, I haven't talked to a GI doctor yet, but I really am not sure why it's only been pregnancy related. Once I further researched my gallbladder issues, I'm really even more confused as to why I've only had gallbladder attacks while I was pregnant. But anyway, yeah, so gallbladder attacks, I had 3 of them. Luckily, my husband was home for the last 3 that I had. I've had 4 total now because I had one a few days after I had my baby. But anyway, I mentioned it to my OBGYN. She said that she thought it was heartburn. Now, I go to a group, so I mentioned it to one of the OBGYNs. She said she thought it was heartburn. I for sure knew it was not heartburn. Like, I was like, this is not heartburn. This is really, really painful, and this is really intense, and heartburn is not like that. So I kind of just ignored it, and then I got another one a few weeks later, so I mentioned it to another OBGYN at my group, and she was like, that sounds like a gallbladder attack. Let's get an ultrasound on your gallbladder. Let's get blood work done. I think they dropped the ball on the ultrasound because they never called me to schedule an ultrasound while I was pregnant, but they did send back blood work that everything was fine. So I was like, well, everything's fine. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. And then I got one more a couple weeks before I gave birth. And I was so focused on having this VBAC and getting baby into the right position that I had it and I was like, that really sucked. That's the 3rd time I've had one of those. But maybe I won't get another one while I'm pregnant. I'm due in a couple weeks, so maybe this will just kind of all go away. And so yeah, I will touch base back on the gallbladder issue here in a few minutes when I talk about my postpartum issues. But that was an issue that I was having while I was pregnant. I also was really worried about my baby's position. So in the days leading up to giving birth, I was doing the Miles circuit every day. I'm going to put a link in my description box what the Miles circuit is, and also a video that was really helpful on how to exactly do the Miles circuit, because there's a website and then there's also a video. So you'll see both of those things if you're interested. I really think it helped me to get my baby into position, but it also helped me just kind of like take my mind off of things. It was something that I could actually focus on, so it sounds like when I say that I was trying to take my mind off of things, it's kind of the opposite, because I was really focused on it. But I think I needed that to kind of like keep my stress levels low, to feel like I was doing everything I could to try to encourage the baby to get head down. Because at my 38-week appointment, I was hoping to get a membrane sweep, and they could not do a membrane sweep because the baby's head wasn't low enough. It wasn't engaged. So that's when I kind of started doing the mile circuit. And I tried to get a membrane sweep 2 more times at 39 weeks and at 40 weeks. And they were not able to give me one because of the same reason. So I was really worried about going into labor and the baby's head not being low enough, or getting induced and the baby not being low enough. So I did a lot of mile circuit every night that I could leading up to the days of giving birth. I never actually went into spontaneous labor. I was really hoping that that would happen for me. I think that's every person's goal. You don't want to be medically induced. You don't want to have a C-section. You hope to go into labor naturally. I did not, unfortunately. I kept having Braxton Hicks, but they actually started like decreasing in the days leading up to me giving birth. So that was a little discouraging. And I was just feeling in the last days of my pregnancy, feeling very discouraged, like this was not going to happen for me. I felt like my body was failing me again. You know, I had a C-section with my son. If you're interested in watching my birth story, I will put a card up there above so you can watch that, and you can learn all about my induction and how it led into an emergency C-section. And I really just didn't want to go down the same path that I did with that birth. I wanted to try to do things differently. So I just was getting discouraged because it felt like things were leading down that same path. So yeah, I was just very emotional. I cried a lot in the last days. They called to schedule me for a C-section on a Monday, and I had an appointment the Tuesday before, and I basically had to advocate for myself to try to do as much as I could to get this VBAC. I asked for a membrane sweep and they weren't able to do it. So I said, okay, what else can we do to encourage a vaginal birth at this point? Because I have a C-section scheduled on Monday. They weren't going to let me go past 41 weeks. And luckily the doctor that I had was like, why don't we do an induction? Would you like to do an induction? And I was like, if that's my only choice, then yes, because spontaneous labor didn't look like it was coming, and I will take what I can get. So I was scheduled for an induction the following Friday, which would have been 3 days before my scheduled C-section. I was very, very nervous. Like I said, I didn't want to go down the same path that I did with my previous birth, and I was induced during my previous birth. But the plan was a little different this time. So the plan was that I would be getting a Foley catheter, and that would help to dilate me. I was already at 2 centimeters dilated and 50% effaced. So my body was already doing a little bit more than it had done previously when I was pregnant before. So I felt a little encouraged by that. They told me to eat a big meal before I came in. I could barely eat that night. My husband and I went to Cava. If you haven't been to Cava, they have this lemon chicken bowl that is just so good. Normally I would really enjoy it, but I was just like way too nervous to even consider enjoying it. So Friday night I went in to the hospital. I got all checked in, got my IV hooked up, all this crazy stuff they do to you when you get to the hospital. Because I was GBS positive, they had to start doing antibiotics. You know, I've got the gown on, we signed all the paperwork, and they hooked me up with the heart monitor so they could monitor the baby's heart, and she was having extreme accelerations. I was really surprised. I think because I was nervous, I was kind of sitting in a weird position. It was putting maybe some stress on her, but her heart was accelerating close to 200 beats per minute and should be at like 140. So my doctor came in, talked to me, and she was like, I think we should just monitor this a little longer, see if it goes down, but this is not normal, and this is a reason that we would do a C-section. So over the course of the next few hours, it was still kind of high. It was just kind of going up and down, up and down. And so I started kind of moving around and just trying to get comfortable and just relaxing, and eventually her heart rate went down. It went back to the normal rate, and the doctor came in a couple times before that and kind of scared us, because she was like, I think we should do a C-section. I think you guys should think about this. So we were really relieved when her heartbeat went down, because Obviously, I did not want to have a C-section. But we did agree that if it didn't go down, we were going to have a C-section that night. You know, my husband and I, and we were trying to kind of like make peace with that. And I was very emotional about it, but we were super relieved, like I said, when her heartbeat normalized. But with that being said, my doctor that I had there at the hospital on call was not comfortable like just rushing into an induction at that point after her heart rate had been so high. She basically said that if she had been under stress and then if labor came on, she would be under more stress and it might not be safe for the baby. So she wanted to do like a low dose of Pitocin overnight and just see how the heart rate did overnight. And so we did that. We had I think the Pitocin was up to maybe like level 6. I think the highest they normally go is like 20, so that kind of gives you an idea of the intensity of it. I didn't feel anything. I tried to sleep as best I could. It's very uncomfortable in the hospital. They come in and check on you constantly. And then around 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock I think maybe, the doctor came back in before she was leaving. It was a shift change, and she said that the baby did really well overnight, and that we would be fine to do an induction. So I had a new doctor come in and discuss with me how the Foley catheter would work and what that would look like. So they did a Foley, and they were able to insert it maybe about an hour later, about 8 o'clock in the morning, and it would stay in for 12 hours. And so I was feeling like really emotional again at this point, because I knew that nothing was really going to happen for the next 12 hours probably, and we were just going to be sitting there in the hospital, and I was really missing my son. I was having a really hard time grasping the fact that we would probably be there a lot longer than I wanted to be, and I even thought maybe I should just have a C-section, because then I might get to go home a little sooner and be back with my son. I'm really glad I did not go that route. But so they inserted the Foley catheter. It was not uncomfortable to insert, but it was uncomfortable while it was in. And so I was told I actually had a midwife at this point. It wasn't the doctor, it was the midwife who told me I should try to move around a lot throughout the day, since I was going to be, have it in for a while. That usually it would fall out on its own once you were dilated. Like if you got to like maybe 4 or 5 centimeters, she said that's typically where people can get to with the Foley catheter, that it would usually fall out on its own, but not to be discouraged if it didn't. It did not fall out on its own. I wore it for the entire 12 hours, so I was almost sure that even though I was moving around that day, I was on the exercise ball next to the hospital bed and just trying to do what I could throughout the day. It did not fall on its own. I just knew in my mind that there was no progress, that I was still going to be at 2 centimeters dilated. But when they took it out, lo and behold, I was 6 centimeters dilated. It had been a very, like I said before, a very emotional day. I cried so many times. I just missed my son so much. I don't know if that was the Pitocin that was going in the background, because they still had Pitocin on, or what, but it was just rough. So I felt very relieved to hear that I was 6 centimeters dilated. So this is Saturday night, it's about 8 o'clock, and she said, wow, you made some really great progress. I think we can turn the Pitocin up a little bit, and we can probably break your water by about 10 o'clock tonight. So that was 2 hours later. Now in my previous birth, when I had my waters broken, that was when really hit the fan. Like it got really intense really quick. So I had a discussion right then and there when she talked about breaking my waters about getting an epidural soon after that. I did not want to do this en natural. I was totally open to having an epidural. And she said that she thought that was a good idea because, when you're induced, you have a lot of medical interventions that can be a lot more painful than regular natural labor. Contractions can come on a lot faster and a lot more intense because of the Pitocin than they would naturally. So I think I was very supported in that decision to have an epidural, and that felt really good. So about 2.5 hours later, they came in and they broke my water. In the meantime, between the time of getting the catheter out and having my waters broken, I went ahead and did the mile circuit again. And I felt that was helping to get the baby in a position. I tried to stay in any position that I felt a lot of pressure down below. But I wasn't having any pain from any contractions yet, even though my Pitocin was being raised every half an hour by like 2. So I think by the time my waters were broken, I might have been up to a 12 with the Pitocin. I think that sounds about right. Either a 10. No, you know what? It was a 10. I was up to a 10. So then they broke my water, and then they came back in and turned the Pitocin up to a 12. And that's when stuff hit the fan, like for real. And I was like, okay, I have to pee. This is getting really intense. I'm thinking maybe I should ask for an epidural soon, because I was really having to breathe through those contractions, and I was kind of bracing myself through them, and it was getting really intense. So I was like, when I go pee, if I have more than 2 while I'm in there, then I know that these are coming really, really close together, and I should ask for an epidural. And I had 6 while I was in the bathroom. So they were coming really close together. And by the time I got out of the bathroom, I told my husband, can you call the nurse? I want an epidural. They came really fast, talked to me about the epidural. They were getting it in. I was just having contractions back to back to back. I was so uncomfortable. I was really kind of getting scared at that point, because I was having like flashbacks of my previous birth. I have a little bit of trauma from it, and I was really worried that things were going to end in the same result that they did with his birth, with my son's birth. And I was really worried that I would have to start pushing soon, but that my baby's head wasn't engaged and I wouldn't be able to push her out, and I would just end up in another C-section. So they came in, they gave me my epidural. It was really rough just to get the epidural, because I kept having contractions while she was trying to put the needle in my spine. But she finally got it in, and she laid me down. And in the meantime, the midwife came in to check me, and she looked at me and she said, "Are you ready to have a baby?" And I was like, "What?" She said, "You're ready. I can feel her head. You're 10 centimeters. It's time to push." And I knew it was in the back of my mind, because I was having so much pressure down below, but I did not have my epidural yet. So she had, I guess they use I can't remember the word, starts with a B. It's like 2 parts when they do this epidural. I don't remember exactly the details, but basically I didn't have the full epidural yet. I just had a general anesthesia. So I was still feeling a lot. It was not a full epidural, and that was kind of scary, because it was time to push, and I wasn't going to get the second part of the epidural. But I will say that during birth, when you get the opportunity to push, it does take away all of that pressure down below during the contraction, because you're able to kind of like use it for purpose, and the pain kind of transforms from pressure into what's happening when you're pushing. Your baby is coming out. I have to say my husband was so supportive during this process, because he was at my first birth, and he knew what it was like for me to be pushing and the baby wasn't coming. And this time around, my baby was coming, and he looked me in the eyes and he gave me so much reassurance. He was like, "Yeah, she's coming," because I asked several times, like, "Can you see anything? Can you really see her head? Is she really coming?" And he's just my hero, because he really reassured me during that. I don't know if I could have done it without him. I mean, obviously I would have done it, but I felt so empowered having him by my side and reassuring me, knowing that my pushes were productive. I had her out in 20 minutes. It felt more like 2 hours, and I am proud to say that it was a mostly natural birth, because I didn't have that full epidural. I immediately said afterwards that I never wanted to do it again, because it was very, very uncomfortable. But yeah, then they put her right on my chest, and it was so different from my first birth, because with the C-section, they take the baby away, and they do all of these tests, and they check them over to make sure they're healthy, which I totally understand, but it was so rewarding to have the baby put right on my chest. And she laid there for an hour, and I was able to breastfeed her and just hold her and look at her and recover and do all of the things that feel more natural to do after you give birth. And it wasn't, like I said, for another hour until they took her just for a couple of moments to measure her, weigh her, and do all of her stats, make sure she was healthy. And it was just amazing. We got to do delayed cord cutting, which I didn't get to do with my C-section. So They didn't cut the cord for quite a few minutes. They waited for the blood to kind of stop pumping through that, and my husband got to cut it himself, which I know that he really enjoyed doing. We missed that experience the first time. I was immediately hungry. I was so hungry because for the last, 36 hours or something, I had been on a liquid diet. So I didn't mention that, but during the induction, I couldn't eat anything. It told me to eat a big meal Friday night, which I see why now, because all I could have was like Jell-O, popsicles, and broth. And the broth was basically water. It was not broth. So she was born at midnight, so they broke my water at 10 p.m. and I had her at 12:37 a.m. So it was a very short process from the time they broke my water and turned that Pitocin up to when I had her. I had very minimal tearing. I think they called it 1st degree. I had some stitches. It was not painful at all to have that done, but it was very painful when they were pressing on my stomach, and that's something I guess they have to do. They did say I was bleeding a lot, so they came in and checked me a lot to make sure that nothing was going on there. And they kept the Pitocin on, which is supposed to help your uterus to keep contracting, to push all of that out of you so that they can make sure all of the placenta comes out. I did have my placenta encapsulated. If you don't know about that, I highly, highly recommend it. I really feel like it helps me with my postpartum issues, mostly my mood and how I feel emotionally when I get home. But the protocol with that at the hospital is that you have to have they'll give you your placenta and they'll put it in a little Tupperware for you, and you can put it right on ice, but you have to have your placenta out of the hospital within 4 hours, which was fine. The lady who does my placenta encapsulation, her name is Alana Pennewell, and if you're local, I'll put her information down below in the description box. I highly recommend her. She's a sweetheart, and she has a legit business where she does this. And she came and picked the placenta up. I just had to have it in a cooler with ice. And then she actually was able to drop my pills off the day I got home from the hospital. So I had them right away. She gives you like this little artwork of your placenta. And then I think the first time I got like 150 pills, but this time my placenta was a little bit smaller. I only got 120 pills, which is fine. It's definitely plenty. And I just I think the first week it was to take 2 pills 3 times a day, and now I take 2 pills twice a day. But like I said, I really feel like it is a mood booster. It just keeps me level. I remember I did not get them right away with my previous birth, and the first couple days of being home, I definitely was feeling down. And I don't know if that had anything to do with my birth experience or hormones or what, but it was rough. And as soon as I got those pills and took them, the lights came on and I felt immediately better. It was like the clouds parted, the sun came out. It was amazing. So I am a believer that they do everything that they claim to do. So anyway, recovery was amazing. It was everything that I hoped it would be with a VBAC. I was able to get right up, especially because I didn't have that full epidural, and use the restroom, move over to my recovery room, and just take care of my baby and be with my baby. I didn't feel scared or just completely debilitated, because with the C-section you can't actually even walk for the first 24 hours, and they have these things on your legs to keep your blood moving so you don't get any clots. And this was totally different. This just felt more natural. I felt like, I don't know, I felt like I could run a marathon afterwards. Obviously I couldn't, but in comparison to having a C-section, I felt so much better, just light years better. I felt like I could really be present because I didn't have all of that medicine in my system. I wasn't foggy. I was able to like really take in my baby and just enjoy her. And I immediately felt less emotional about not having my son with me or not being home with my son. And he was able to come and visit us in the hospital the next day, which was really special. I got pictures of that and video. It was just such a beautiful moment in time for me, I think for our family. And then we were able to actually go home the day after. So I just, with the C-section, I think you have to be there for 2 or 3 days. And I am so thankful that they let you go home like as soon as possible with a vaginal birth, because that's where I wanted to be. And just to get into our routine of being home and being a family and adjusting. My husband had 2 weeks off of work, and he went back to work today. Today was his first day back. And we just really kind of like hung around the house. We ate out quite a bit. We went to a brewery and had a beer. I wanted a beer because I hadn't had one in so long. And just spent time together and really tried to help my son adjust to being a big brother and sharing the attention that he had to share because we have a new little baby around. It has been a difficult couple of weeks in that regard, and I think today was actually a better day because we were actually in our routine of my husband not being here, and he's used to that. He's used to my husband being at work. So today seems to be going a lot better than the last 2 weeks did. I don't know if it's because it's been 2 weeks and he's adjusting or if it's my husband's back at work, but I will say that the last 2 weeks have been really difficult. We've had a lot of tantrums, a lot of crying, some biting, some hitting. It's been a little crazy. But things seem to be turning a corner, and I'm super thankful for that. As far as postpartum stuff goes, lots of night sweats, another gallbladder attack. So I had, I think on our 3rd day home from the hospital, my 4th gallbladder attack. So I was like, all right, I need to call the doctor. This is not only happening during my pregnancy. And I was really scared because now I have 2 kids and my husband's not always going to be home if this happens. So I had a ultrasound ordered for me the following Friday, which would have been last Friday, and I have a huge gallstone in my gallbladder. It is enormous. It was crazy and scary to see on the ultrasound. The ultrasound tech showed it to me. So I'm guessing I'm going to have my gallbladder taken out. If you guys have had gallbladder issues, please leave a comment below. I want to know what your experience is, whether you still have your gallbladder or not. The scary thing to me is that I don't have little gallstones. I have like one big gallstone. And that is, I feel like it could grow even bigger and like possibly infect and impact the gallbladder. So I'm nervous about that. I'm kind of like ready to get it out if that's the right thing to do. I've also done some research on a more holistic approach. I have been paying a little bit more attention to my diet. I'm so nervous about getting another attack. I don't really know what brings it on because I never eat before I have an attack. Usually, every time that I've paid attention to that aspect of things, I haven't eaten in quite a few hours, like 5 or 6 hours. So I don't know what the correlation is. Maybe I need to be eating more frequently. I don't know. But I'm waiting at this point for a doctor to call me back and let me know what my next step is. And like I said, if you've had an experience with your gallbladder, I'd love to hear about it. Please leave a comment. It seems to be a very common thing. When I shared my issues on Instagram, I got a ton of messages from you guys sharing a lot of people who have had their gallbladder removed. It's just so common. It's crazy to me. So, yeah, postpartum night sweats, obviously some bleeding. I'm having more bleeding than I did with my C-section, which is fine. It's not a big deal. I can navigate that. I'm just changing my sheets a lot because of the night sweats. And they are actually less than when I had my C-section. But they're weird because usually when you sweat in your sleep, you're hot. But with night sweats, like postpartum night sweats, you're not hot. You just wake up soaking wet. It's got to be similar to, what's that called? Menopause. It's got to be similar to menopause, I'm guessing. It is super frustrating. So I've been changing my sheets a lot and just dealing with that. It's not fun. I got 2 things that I really love for my postpartum experience, and it is a Belly Bandit belly band. I feel like it has given me some support. I got it in case I had a C-section, but I really have been enjoying it even though I didn't have a C-section because my midline is still very weak from being pregnant for 9 months. So I've liked to wear that for like a couple hours every day. And then also Belly Bandit makes these bike shorts and I freaking love them. Even at 2 weeks postpartum, like I feel like it makes my belly a lot flatter than if I wasn't wearing them. It just gives me some confidence. So I've really been enjoying those. I wish I had them 2.5 years ago when I had my son. But other than that, I have been juicing celery in the morning, taking a probiotic. I haven't had the skin issues that I had previously. I think that has helped a ton, and just kind of cleaning up my diet a little bit because I was kind of eating, a lot of ice cream at night before I went to bed when I was pregnant. So I'm trying to do a little less of that. Eat more vegetables. I've been doing like acai bowls for breakfast and I've really been enjoying that. And, because everything that you go through in the hospital, it kind of like I had all of that antibiotics from the being GBS positive in the IV, and it just cleans your system out. So I've been trying to put some good things back in, which is why I think the celery juice helps, and taking a probiotic and just eating a lot of fruit and vegetables to try to like rebuild that gut health. A ton of you have messaged me on Instagram to ask me how breastfeeding is going. I so appreciate anybody who reaches out to me on there and just is asking me how I'm doing. A lot of you have just asked me how I am and how things are going, and I just so appreciate it. Breastfeeding is going great. Isla is a good little breastfeeder, just like Miles was. We had a little bit of like discomfort on one side, and I went ahead and changed her position and started doing a football hold over there, and then that improved. And then over the course of the following week, I was able to actually put her back in like more of a cradle hold, and now everything is smooth sailing. I have been saving some milk in case I do have to have gallbladder surgery. I just use a Haka. I don't pump. It's just not my thing. So I use my Haka to just kind of have a little extra stash in case I have to have surgery. I'm really not sure what to expect with that, how long it's going to be from now, how much milk I need to have saved up. But I am concerned about that, so I'm just trying to prepare in case. Here she is. Somebody's going to comment and say, never wake a sleeping baby. She's been only 2 weeks old and she's been sleeping for over 3 hours. So I think it was time to wake her up. Yeah. This is baby Isla. She weighed 7 pounds and 9 ounces, and she is 2 weeks old, and we just love her. We call her Lou. We also call her Lulu, and we still, if you have been following me on Instagram, you'll know that we called her Baby Sissy for a long time. So we still call her Baby Sissy, and she's a sweetie. So yeah, I'm gonna do a little feed and spend some time with her while Miles naps. I think he finally fell asleep. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.